Reports starting to escalate once again for a new Toronto Maple Leafs target, and this one is desperately needed as it is a goaltender, and reports are coming out that the Leafs are actively pursuing Laurent Brossoit, who formerly played for the Winnipeg Jets last season and put up some very good stats. So to break down that report, as well as another report and rumor that is circulating that Dakota Joshua could be interested in coming to the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're going to break all that down. Before we do, if you're a part of the 80 or so percent who are not subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It would mean the world to Darius and myself as we produce daily videos for you guys about the Toronto Maple Leafs, and there's tons to talk about, so we covered all off season long. There is a lot to get into today. This one's a very interesting one, and I'm excited to discuss this. Two key targets for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're going to be combining a couple of them in this video, and that is, of course, Dakota Joshua and mainly focusing on Laurent Brossoit. Now, he formerly obviously played for the Vegas Golden Knights. He played for the Jets last year behind Connor Hellebuck, and quite frankly, he put up some incredible stats last season. Let's just dive right into the report here. So you can see the Leafs are reportedly targeting Laurent Brossoit from a potential goalie tandem with Joseph Woll next season, while former Leaf Dakota Joshua also has interest in joining the team. Now, Darius, we discussed this in a video a couple weeks back, like right when the offseason ended. The goalie situation is very interesting right now for the Leafs. They want a 1A goalie. Could Brossoit be that guy? That's up in the air, but we'll look at his stats later. 927 save percentage last year on a very good regular season Winnipeg Jets team. This makes all the sense in the world, and you have some fans saying that he's probably his favorite value target in net right now among goalies with 10 plus games played, third in the NHL with a 927 save percentage, with fifth in expected, or GSA expected. So what are your thoughts on this? Brossoit, very interesting guy. Dakota Joshua as well. We're going to focus on Brossoit for this very moment. What are your thoughts on him?
This is the guy that the Leafs have to acquire in free agency. This is the guy that the Leafs have to get in free agency, 100%. We talked about it a few weeks ago. Like you mentioned, there was an article that came out with a couple targets that the Leafs could possibly look at in free agency, goaltending targets, that is, and nobody came close to Brossoit for me. Like, this is absolutely the guy they have to look at in free agency. He was great on the Winnipeg Jets last year. He helped the Vegas Golden Knights win a Stanley Cup. Obviously, it was Adin Hill, but he did play some games. He was a big factor there in Vegas when they won the Stanley Cup that year. So he's been good everywhere he goes. He's just never been like a 1A type goalie, and I think that's fine because of where the Leafs are going with their goaltending. We've talked about it. It looks like they might go back to a 3 goalie tandem next year. It could involve Martin Jones, but even with Joseph Woll, yes, he has injury issues as of late, stuff like that. But if you introduce Brossoit and then Martin Jones as well as 3 goaltenders, you split the season 3 ways. I think he could stay healthy, right? He's getting a lot of rest in there. So I think this is absolutely the route the Leafs have to go. And it sounds like they are targeting him. It sounds like he would be a very possible, acquisition for them in free agency. So I would lean towards that. Like you said, his stats were great and he's a good goaltender. He is at what he does.
Yeah, and again, he hasn't really had a full season with him starting really ever. He had the stretch there with the Golden Knights when he won a playoff series because of that as well, but very interesting to see if they actually can acquire him going forward, and a lot of that depends on what Laurent Brossoit wants himself, but ultimately, great target for the Leafs, probably the one that makes the most sense, especially if they don't target a goalie in the Mitch Marner trade, and it seems like reports are starting to come out that might not be the case. They'll probably go towards a guy like a defenseman or maybe some not or forwards or something that's not goaltending. We don't know for sure, but that seems like to be the way that they are leaning. But Darius, let's get into the second part of that report now, which is Dakota Joshua. And this guy is very interesting because Canucks, obviously, they're still, they had a great year, and Dakota Joshua was drafted by the Leafs in 2014, and according to reports, would be interested in a reunion with Toronto. The 29-year-old, career high, 18 goals, 14 assists in 63 games with the Canucks last season. So the interest is mutual. If you actually go and read the report, it seems like he's interested in joining the Toronto Maple Leafs. When you have a player like that, you can't, I'll get into that article in a second, you can't really complain. If you bring a guy like him in, could really augment the ceiling of this team and lower the floor as well, or heighten the floor, as well.
Yeah, I think he would be a great addition to the Leafs. This is a player you need. Like, if you look at his stats from last year, at least in the regular season, they're nothing that amazing, right? Like, nothing where you're like, we absolutely need this player. But when you look at his playoff stats too, you're like, okay, this is a guy who was scoring for the Canucks in the playoffs when their top guys weren't. Yeah. And I don't know about you, Nick, but that sounds pretty familiar to me. So I think this would be a pretty good acquisition for the Leafs as well. And the Leafs have a lot of aging forwards as well, like John Tavares, for example. So, if you were to inject a couple guys like this who are younger and not in their mid 30s, it could help the Leafs a little bit. And obviously, he was drafted by the Leafs and never worked out. The organization was going through a lot of change and turnover, around that time that he was drafted. So, I think he's finally found his footing. A lot of guys, it takes time, like until they're 28, 29, and they finally find it and they're playoff type players, for example. And this seems like it could be a good fit for the Leafs and for Joshua too. He was great for the Canucks, right? I'll say it again. Like when the top guys went away for the Canucks, this guy was scoring goals and making plays happen for them. And he was a big part of their first round win, at least. So it could be an interesting fit. I'll say that. I'm not going to say it's going to be an amazing fit or anything like that, but it could be something that the Leafs should definitely look at.
Yeah, looking at his stats, you mentioned it. 32 points, 63 games, half point per game ish, and 28 years old, would be entering his prime now. These are the type of players that we've been talking about over the past few videos that really you need on your team if you want to compete for the cup and you want to have these depth pieces. And we'll get into what you just kind of mentioned there a little bit into. I mean, the Leafs drafted him way back 2014, a while ago. So maybe that's why he wants to play. And you can see he played 42 games for the Blues from 2021 to 2022 under now Maple Leafs head coach Craig Berube. Possibility they could obviously be interested in this. But I think in general, overall, I would love it. Dakota Joshua makes total sense to me. It makes sense to the fan base. And the question now, all these guys, Darius, make sense to us. It makes sense to, doesn't make sense to the front office is the biggest question going forward for the Toronto Maple Leafs, because you think about Brossoit, you think about Dakota Joshua. Like I would like both of these guys. We've talked about Jake DeBrusk a whole lot as well. Like there's a lot of turnaround that I think is going to happen within the organization. Obviously, the first thing that needs to happen is the coaching staff being figured out, the assistant coaching staff. Obviously, Sheldon Keefe is gone. He's gone now. So you have Craig Berube. They need to figure out the assistant coaching and then start to get these players. They'll probably wait till the cup ends for that to fully get underway, especially regarding Mitch Marner trade talks. But both of these guys would fit the timeline. They fit what the Leafs need, especially Laurent Brossoit. He is about as perfect of a fit as you could ask, given they still want to give Joseph Woll a chance to develop, but you also want to have a guy who's a bit more steady than Ilya Samsonov or Martin Jones in that 1B, 1A spot. So I think both of these make sense. Just a matter of if they're going to pull the trigger or not.
Yeah, Brossoit makes sense. That's the guy. Like, go get that goaltender if you can. That makes perfect sense to me. Joshua, I think, is somebody you definitely take a look at. I think the Leafs now, their philosophy is changing a little bit. It's going backwards in a way, because I think hockey as a whole is going backwards in a way, at least in the playoffs. So back to what it was. Like if you watch a playoff game from maybe 2017 or 18, it's a little different than what we're watching right now. Guys are getting away with a lot more. It's more physical, I think, now. So it's going back a little bit to the way it was. So the Leafs are going to try and build a team that mirrors that, I think, with Craig Berube and obviously Brad Treliving, addressing things after the season like that. We weren't tough enough. We're not scoring enough goals. We need depth scoring. Joshua adds that, right? 18 goals in 63 games is not bad for a regular season player, depth player. It's really not bad. That's an extra 20 goals to your team. And obviously Austin Matthews scores all of the Leafs goals. So if you can add some more depth scoring like that, and McMahon really turned it on in the second half, then now we're talking, right? So I think he is a very good option.
Yeah, let us know what your thoughts are on Dakota Joshua down in the comment section below, as well as Laurent Brossoit. But that'll wrap it up. Thank you guys for watching. See you soon.